The Making of the Apu Trilogy by Satyajit Ray. About the author. Satyajit Ray was an Indian filmmaker, writer, composer, visual artist, and author who is known for his outstanding contribution to Indian and world cinema. Born to a wealthy family in Calcutta, Ray's father and grandfather were both Bengali writers of considerable repute. He went to Rabindranath Tagore's Bishwabharati University, which brought him close to rural Bengal. His first movie, Pother Pachali, garnered both critical and commercial acclaim. The movie was influential in launching Indian cinema to the world, as a result of which it won the 1950 Cannes Film Festival Award. His important works include Charulata, Shatranj Ke Khilari, Agantuk, Jalsa Ghar, and Aparajito, among others. His literary contribution to Bengali literature, especially children's literature, has been a great one. His short stories and detective fiction are famous among teens, and he has successfully created iconic characters like Feluda, the detective, and the intriguing scientist Professor Shonku. He received a number of national and international awards, including the 1992 Oscar Lifetime Achievement Award, Dadasaheb Phalke Award, Bharat Ratna, Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan, Padma Vibhushan, and many more. He also received an honorary degree from Oxford. He died on 23rd April 1992. The Apu Trilogy. The Apu Trilogy comprises 3 Indian Bengali films directed by Satyajit Ray: Pother Pachali, Aparajito, and Apu Sansar. They are frequently listed among the greatest films of all time and are often cited as the greatest films in the history of Indian cinema. They are based on 2 Bengali novels written by Bibhutibhushan Bandopadhyay, Pother Pachali and Aparajito. The 3 films had won many national and international awards. About this story, the chapter discusses the experiences of the director Satyajit Ray and his crew while shooting the films. The first part of the chapter is about a particular scene of the first film of the Apu Trilogy, Pother Pachali, Song of the Little Road, which is about Apu's early experiences in rural Bengal as the son of a poor but high-caste family. Apu's father Harihar, a Brahmin, has difficulty in supporting his family. After the death of Apu's sister Durga, the family moves to a holy city of Benares. The scene described in this part of the chapter involves Apu, Durga, and a sweetmeat seller, Chinibas. The scene involves the passing of Chinibas outside Harihar's house and his straight calls, to which Durga and Apu run out of the house to look longingly at Chinibas, knowing well that they can't afford to buy any sweets. Chinibas calls out again and Durga shakes her head, and Chinibas goes on his way with his pots swinging with his gait. The sight is too enticing, and Durga decides to follow Chinivas to watch other people buying sweets. Apu runs alongside. This is how the scene is described in the book Pother Pachali by Bibhutibhushan Bandopadhyay. But the director wanted to make it a little more interesting by having their pet dog join in the pursuit. The dog was untrained, but this time it had to be trained to get the perfect shot. Durga was made to clap her hands behind her back and hold a sweet in one of them to entice the dog. They had a few rehearsals with Durga walking and the dog following. The snag was to make the dog jump and run after Durga in the same shot the moment the latter started following Chinibas. A man was stationed just behind the camera to call out to the dog at the required moment. However, it took 11 takes to get the action right. The dog behaved perfectly in the shot in which the procession, Chinivas, Apu, Durga, and the dog walking in a line, is reflected in the pond. According to the director, 11 takes are not such an unusual figure for films where one has to work with animals. He also mentions the efforts of the Western directors like William Wyler. Durga hears the tread calling bell of Chinibas, the sweetmeat seller. She goes out to find him out, spots him, and immediately calls Apu. Apu too comes quickly to look at him. Now both of them run out of the house to look at him longingly, knowing very well that they can't afford to buy those delicious sweets that he was carrying with him. Chinivas, the fat jovial man, calls out again and offers her some of the sweets that he was carrying in his earthen pots. Durga, at this point, urges Apu to convince Father Harihar to give them some money to buy those sweets. Apu agrees to go and ask for some money from his father Harihar. Unfortunately, their entreaty was declined, and Apu comes back with the news with a broken heart. Chinibas asks one last time, to which she nods her head. Now Chinibas decides to leave. The sight was too enticing, so Durga decides to follow Chinibas to watch other people buy sweets, and Apu runs alongside. Satyajit Ray wanted to make the scene a little more interesting by having their pet dog join in the pursuit. Three of them run after Chinibas. Chinibas has a particular gait, with the earthen pots hanging from the two ends of a pole which he carries on his shoulders, swinging. There was a few rehearsals for this particular scene to be shot. It took 11 takes to get the action right. Fortunately, in the truly great shots, including the one in which the procession is reflected in the pond, the dog behaved perfectly. As this was an untrained dog, and the snag was to make the dog jump and run after Durga in the same shot the moment the latter started following Chinibas. And this is how the scene was completed. It took 11 takes to get the action right. Which action did the speaker want to get right? The speaker, Satyajit Ray, wanted the pet dog of Durga and Apu to join them in their pursuit of the sweetmeat seller. This is the action he wanted to get right. Why was it difficult? It was difficult because the dog was untrained. What do you think a take is? A take is a scene filmed or televised at one time without stopping the camera. It is an uninterrupted photographing or televising of a scene. How did the speaker get the action right? The dog was untrained, but this time it had to be trained to get the perfect shot. Durga was made to clap her hands behind her back and hold a sweet in one of them to entice the dog. They had a few rehearsals with Durga walking and the dog following. The snag was to make the dog jump and run after Durga in the same shot the moment the latter started following Chinibas. A man was stationed just behind the camera to call out to the dog at the required moment. However, it took 11 takes to get the action right. The dog behaved perfectly in the shot in which the procession is reflected in the pond. The scene involved his passing outside Harihar's house on the other side and calling out, "Sweets for sale, do you want any sweets?" Where is the line taken from? The line is taken from The Making of the Apu Trilogy, written by Satyajit Ray. Who is the person referred to here as his? Chinibas, the sweetmeat seller, is referred to here as his. Who is Harihar? Harihar is the father of Apu and Durga. What does Apu and Durga do after the person calls out for selling the sweets? After Chinibas calls out for selling his sweets, Durga and Apu run out of the house to look longingly at Chinibas, knowing well that they can't afford to buy any sweets. Chinibas calls out again and Durga shakes her head and Chinibas goes on his way with his pot swinging with his gait. The sight is too enticing and Durga decides to follow Chinibas to watch the other people buying sweets. Apu runs alongside. That's all for now. Stay tuned for part 2. Thank you.